We are live, sir.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashish Gupta. I'm Director of Admissions and Outreach at Jindal Global University, and in this session we are going to talk about mangroves and how they can be a solution for climate change. So today, if humanities are facing two big challenges, that is health and climate change, we are often hearing about climate change and how it is going to impact. It has already started impacting, but everyone is going to be impacted with this. So for this session with me today is Professor Abhiroop Chaudhary. Dr. Abhiroop is an Associate Professor and Assistant Dean, Student Affairs at Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, OP Jindal Global University. Since 2007, he is actively involved with social organizations working on mangrove conservation, plantation through community mobilization models at Indian Sundarbans. He had his PhD from IIT Dhanbad with Best Researcher Award. He has also worked with lot of organizations in same space and has been working on mangrove and mangrove conservation for last 14 years. So welcome, Professor Abhiroop. How are you?
Thank you, Ashish, for this wonderful introduction. And it is always a pleasure for me to be part of this kind of session where I can talk about mangroves. It's something that I really is very passionate about. And I think we're currently with the catastrophe that we are going through right now, the climate change problems, mangrove can play a very important role there. How it can play an important role, that is the entire topic of the discussion today. We'll be talking about that, how it happened, how it can be done, and post the presentation, I'll be welcoming questions from you, Ashish, and also from all the viewers who would be taking part in this session.
Right.
And
so before, please.
Yes. So with this note, I will be sharing a small presentation to make it clear what is mangrove and why we need to conserve them. So just give me.
Before going ahead, I would just put a comment here for our viewers also, that every day we hear about climate change, how catastrophic climate change can be, and there's a lot of fear mongering around this, that what it can be done, and there's a lot of activism also around climate change, but we very rarely listen to the solutions, that what all we can do and implement in our day-to-day lives, and how as an individual or as a family we can help and impact for environment. So that's why I was also interested for this session, because when I heard mangroves, an ecological solution to fight against climate change, I think it's very important for students. I'll request all the students to not only just listen and understand, but also do share these learnings within your community. So with this, over to you, Professor Abhiroop.
Thank you. So I hope the screen is visible. I'll make it in a slideshow mode. 1 minute. Yeah, I think it is in slideshow mode. Right. So today, as Ashish has rightly mentioned, I mean, we are going through a very tough time. Climate change is not a myth anymore, though for quite a period of time, we try to ignore this particular problem, thinking that it is a myth. It may or may not exist. But now it is clear, with the changing weather pattern, changing patterns of natural disaster, frequency, intensity of the disaster that is hitting the coastlines, different part of the world, it is very clear and evident that climate change is there and we have to do something about it. Okay, so with this in mind, it brings us to my very favorite topic, that is mangrove. This is a group of plants that have the ability to survive in hypersaline conditions. It's a technical term that means where the soil and the water is very saline. It has a lot of salt in it. So they can survive there. And I think that very little is known by many, that mangroves have a huge capacity to store carbon dioxide, more than even many of the terrestrial ecosystems. And conversely, there's another very important services of mangrove. It can save the coastline from natural disaster, which is now increasing both in frequency and in intensity. So with this note, I'll be starting this presentation. So first of all, we'll try to understand what is mangrove and why it is important. The picture that I selected to start and begin with is it is from Indian Sundarban, a very remote location, but it is also the world's largest mangrove patch that we are sharing with our neighbor Bangladesh. So 40% of this mangrove is with us, with India, and it is also having a huge amount, huge population pressure, and most of this population are socio-economically marginalized. And fishing is a very important livelihood. But I am putting this picture on for all to see what is the difficulty faced by the people who stay in this mangrove forested lands when they go out to fish. This is a boat they have to keep inside the forest. This is the mangrove forest that we can see, and this is a long stretch of mud flat, and you can see how much deep it is. So this is the life and livelihood of the people who stays in this mangrove habitat. Now, whenever we are going to talk about mangrove, we cannot talk without understanding the people who resides in this land also. So mangrove grows, survive alongside the people and the population who live in this area. So all the problems are interconnected. That is a fact with almost all the environmental issues that we see nowadays, that everything is linked with each other. Since linkages is something that we want to see over this period of discussion. First of all, what is mangrove? As I already mentioned, these are very unique plant group. It is not a very discrete plant family that only this family member botanically can be said or categorized as a mangrove, but it is a group of plants which has evolutionary adaptation to survive in this very harsh environment, the tidal inundations that goes on in these areas, and the saline condition of the environment. So these plants have some special and very unique adaptations. Two adaptations I'm showing in the right hand corner in the two pictures that I am presenting up. One is, this is a propagule. So in a very layman term, I will call it seed. But the uniqueness of the seed is it is germinating while it is connected with the mother plant. One of a very unique adaptation of mangrove, it is called viviparous germination. So what is why it happens? Because if the seed is dropped to the soil or water of the nearby tidal region, the soil and water is so saline, it may not be favorable for the seedling to grow. That's why the evolution has taken its course, like it has done in almost all the living beings that is now dominating our planet. That evolution has given it a adaptation trait. This trait is the seed started maturing while it is connected to the plant itself, and when it has attained a certain height, then only it is dropped off in the tidal water creek system, from where it can float to nearby locations of mudflat and grow by themselves. So this adaptation is already a part of mangrove. We can also see the another very beautiful adaptation. By the way, the name of the plant is bruguera. So locally it is called kankra because it's the calyxes look like the pincers of crabs. That's why locally it is called kankra, which in if I translate it into English, it will be crabs. But the scientific name of the plant is bruguera, the genus is bruguera. So when we go down to the next picture, now here we see another very beautiful adaptation. These plants are very beautiful. This is the stilt root system. So stilt root system means that root started coming up quite from the height of the shoot itself, and the work of this root is not entirely to take the water from the soil. That is a traditional work of any root system that we all have learned, but this actually helps the plant to support itself in the muddy soil. So this is another adaptation I'll be showing. Apart from that, there are many other anatomical and physiological adaptations that is present in the mangroves. Like for example, one of a very unique adaptation is salt gland, because all this is saline, all the soil, all the water that comes in, these are all saline soil, saline water and saline soil. So this saline soil, when salinity is more, it is difficult for the plant to actually extract the water out. You can see there are a lot of water in the potholes in this tidal creek. It is almost wet, but according to the plant, it is a dry soil. It cannot take in any water because this water is very saline. So in order to support the plant, we have already seen steel root. It also has the mechanism to excrete this excess salt out through salt glands that we find mostly in the lower surfaces of the leaves. They have breathing roots, or we all also call it pneumatophores. So breathing roots are the root that comes out of the soil in order to catch some of the air that is present around, because this soil is also, because it is hypersaline, it do not support any sort of oxygen inside. So the root inside do not get any sort of oxygen supply. So in order to get that, it's another adaptation that is generally shown by these plants. So whichever plant have this sort of anatomical, physiological, or morphological adaptation to survive in this tidal region, which is hypersaline, we call it a mangrove. Now, mangroves are not restricted to only one country or a very small region. No, it is have a cosmopolitan distribution. As we can see, it is the red lines in this map suggest that where it is, where we find mangroves. So we can see that it is almost in all the coastlines in subtropical and tropical region. And we find them in the coastline. They are in almost all the continents that we know of, and they protect the coastal lines because they are adapted to do that. That is exactly their adaptation to survive in this coastal region, this hypersaline condition, survive storms, survive cyclones, which ring a bell, which ring a very similar bell what we used to hear about climate change. Because climate change also creates all these confusions up. It creates more intense natural disaster. It increase or help in rising the sea level. So all of this problem is naturally mitigated by the mangroves because they have evolved to do so in this land. But there is a problem. What is the problem? If I look into this map, I can see very clearly that these mangroves are surviving in areas which are also very much populated with human settlements. And we all know most of the human population is distributed along the coastline, the riverine basins, because that is a place which is more fertile for them to live. There is more livelihood options. So mangroves are in a great threat from the expansion and human developmental ventures. And we can see mangroves growing in China, which is the world's most populated country. The most largest contiguous mangrove patch is with Bangladesh and India, which again have the highest density of population and also a very populated nation. Then we find it in Africa, a country that is raged by different sort of socio-economically economic problems. There also the coastlines are very populated. Same thing we see in the Caribbean coastline, Mexican coastline, and also in the Everglades. Everywhere we find mangrove, we also find huge population pressure. So this population pressure is an added stress that is being dealt with by the mangrove forest. Now, what is the importance of mangrove in a very nutshell? So mangroves are not only important for helping in fight against climate change, but it itself is a very, very productive ecosystem. The food web of mangroves are very extensive because it is like in a juncture between land and sea. It survives in an area which is between the land and sea. So here in this ecotonic region, we find the representation of both the ecologies in a mangrove ecosystem. And they are the good breeding grounds for many of the crustacean species that survive in the marine ecosystem. Their still root system, their root system is a place where most of these crustacean mollusks breed. And we find it a very common trait in almost all the mangrove patches. They sustain an ecosystem which is very, very diverse and very unique. And that's why many of the mangrove patches across the globe is designated at different level of protection through making, whether it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, through the Biosphere Nature Program, or in different countries have designated own protection regimes. Like in case of Sundarban, it is a national park, it is a tiger reserve. There are 3 sanctuaries. It is a Ramsar wetland conservation site. It is also in UNESCO World Heritage Site. Because in order to protect this unique habitat, And because of this uniqueness, they're also fragile. This term we generally hear when we are traveling in an aeroplane and we are trying to write in the baggage section that we are carrying some fragile baggage. Let it not be destroyed while transport, and be careful. Same thing with this ecosystem. This ecosystem is very fragile. If there is any change in this ecosystem, very difficult for the ecosystem to come back to its original condition. So let's look at some of the mangrove plants. They're very beautiful, according to me. So the A is Heritiaria fomes. It is also called Sundari. This is the plant from which the world's largest contiguous mangrove patch, the Sundarbans, get its name from. So this particular mangrove is called Sundari in Bengali language, from which the Sundarban name has come up. And in Latin nomenclature, it will be Heritiaria fomes. It is a fruit of the Sundari tree. In the sea, we see in a sea part of the picture, we see a very unique plant. It is called Agiceras corniculatum in a Latin botanical name. In a local name, it is called Khalshi. This plant is very famous for its medicinal honey. Most of the myth about the medicinal honey that comes from Sundarban is actually a truth, because this honey that is collected by and propagated due to the flower of this plant, as says corniculatum, it has medicinal properties, and it is proved, and that's one of the reason why honey is one of a very important commodity that comes out of Sundarban. This is the plant that is responsible for it, and it's beautifully arranged flower system. In D, we find a mangrove palm. This is called Phoenix padulosa. So this plant has a very unique adaptation, because, and why it is in a limelight always, the Sundarban tigers, they love to camouflage and stay hidden in these particular plant type. Why? Because after, when summer season sets up, many of their leaves started to turn yellow in color, which is a perfect camouflage or hiding for the Sundarban tigers, which are mangrove tigers. They are same species as the tiger that we see in any other parts of India, but the uniqueness of this tiger are they are adapted to live in these very hypersaline mangrove conditions, and they are very good swimmers. They are very good in climbing trees, and obviously all knows that the Felidae group of the tigers are also very good in camouflaging. So they can camouflage very easily in these patches of Phoenix. In the E, we find another mangrove palm, which is now quite difficult to sight in Indian part of Sundarbans because of the salinity regime, which is rising rapidly due to climate change. This is called Nipa fruticans. So this is also a palm, and we can see a root coming out of the soil. This is called pneumatothodes. It is also another very unique adaptation of this particular plant to survive in the hypersaline condition. And the last plant is the Rhizophora mucronata. This is the plant that we have already seen having this unique still fruit system. This plant play a very important role in consolidating this muddy soil. So it holds the soil up. So whenever there is a storm surge, whenever there is a kind of storm or natural disaster or rain coming in, it can hold the soil up because of its very intricate root system. And this thorn-like roots that are coming out, these are the pneumatophores I was talking about. These are the breathing roots. So mangrove soil is littered, filled with these pneumatophores, and these pneumatophores come out from these plants itself because they want to take the oxygen in the root or underground biomass or the root system. Now about India, where we find mangroves in India. So in India, generally the mangroves are divided into two broad classification parts regionally. So one is the East Coast mangroves, another is the West Coast mangrove. So those mostly, if I ask anybody that where you've heard of the word mangroves, many of the students or maybe the academicians also will answer it's Sundarban. But Sundarban is not the only place where we find mangroves in India. Sundarban is definitely the world's largest contiguous mangrove, but apart from that, we also find mangrove patches in the Mahanadi Delta region. The national park is Bhitarkanika, where we can find it. In the Krishna Godavari Delta, also we find mangroves. In the Kaveri Deltaic system, we find mangroves. Ratnagiri region, it has mangrove patches. Kutch is the second most largest contiguous mangrove patch after Sundarban in India. So it also have a very extensive mangrove system, but all the mangroves have unique characteristics. They are different from each other. Both in, that's why I've given this two very beautiful pictures. The first picture, this green mangrove canopy that we can see, and boat that is rowing past it. This is a picture from Sundarban. You can see the diversity, the thicket, the kind of growth we find of mangrove in the Sundarban region. Why? Because this is a deltaic region, and also it has a huge precipitation. It got a lot of rainfall. So the freshwater flow is not a constraint here. Hence, the mangrove can grow really well. This is a picture from Kutch mangrove. You can see it is same plant, different variety of Avicennia. We call it Bani. So this plant, same plant, a different variety, but see the spacing. It is almost barren. Because why? Because in this area, the rainfall gradient is very limited. It is very near to the run of Kutch. This area, this is a run of Kutch, which is a salt desert, one of the largest salt deserts of the world, and it continues into the third desert of the Rajasthan. So this area do not receive that much rainfall as the Sundarban mangrove. Why I am showing this picture? In order to understand each mangrove patch it has its own uniqueness, and it needs to be conserved accordingly. So as per records, there are 34 species of true mangroves in Bhitarkanika, 31 species. Sundarban has 27, Andaman and Nicobar Island had 24 species, but these are very debatable data. It keep on changing because every now and then different data comes up. Ecosystem services of mangrove. This is a very interesting part I want to focus on. It works in different ecological services. It is a pollution sink. And we have seen that experimentally and scientifically proven that the effluent that enters from Kolkata into the Sundarban Delta system, within 10 kilometers, all the heavy metal get automatically remediated up, taken up by the soil and the plants. They have a natural tendency to absorb or take out pollutants, mostly the heavy metal pollutants from the water that comes in. So it is a pollutant sink. Blue carbon sequestration. This is the tool in the battle against the climate change. One of the very, very important tool. You can say that it is a kind of very important weapon that we have in the battle, and if we use it properly, then it has the power to halt or at least do something meaningful in the direction of managing the climate change conditions. So these soils have a huge potential of sequestering carbon. How and why, that will come a little later. It can stabilize the earthen embankment. So one of the basic problem in this region is that whenever any sort of natural disaster comes up, the earthen embankments are there, it gets breached and the salt water comes in. And when salt water comes in, it floods the agriculture patch. I'll show some picture about on that. And it renders the agricultural farms almost useless for the years to come. So one of our very important ecological services of mangrove is to consolidate the soil and stop or halt the vagaries of the cyclone. The cyclone itself cannot be averted, but the problems it brings along with it, like for example, the flood water, for example, the huge wind speed, that can be managed very effectively by mangrove, and it is both proved by scientific investigations and also by case studies that has presented itself during any sort of natural disaster. It increases the fish catch. Definitely it helps in nutrient cycling, because whatever these are evergreen plants, so whatever leaves that is shed, it remains in the soil, and slowly it releases the nutrients back into the ecosystem. It works as an ecosystem based disaster risk reduction, second tool in fight against climate change that we can use mangrove as. NTFP is non-timber forest product. One of the example I've already given, that is a honey. It can be collected from the mangrove patches. It regulates ecosystem functions of both terrestrial and marine ecosystem, because it is in the juncture of the both. Ecotourism is one of a very interesting aspect that is coming up in the mangrove land, as far as I have seen both in Kutch and in Sundarbans. It is a barrier against saltwater intrusion. Definitely, it is a barrier. It helps the land to not get more saline. 1 minute. Now we'll be talking about a case study. In order to bring the case study, we have to talk a little about which area this case study belongs to. So in this case, we are talking about Sundarbans. So Sundarbans is the world's largest mangrove patch, contiguous mangrove. The word contiguous is very important here, because many people have an idea that India has the largest mangrove, India or Bangladesh, because of the Sundarbans. Sundarbans is the largest contiguous mangrove patch, meaning it is a continuous patch. If a scattered mangrove is calculated, the country that has the largest mangrove cover is Indonesia. Because in Indonesia, the mangrove is scattered over different islands. In case of Sundarban, it is a continuous patch that starts from all this green color. These are the mangrove forest, and most of this forest is totally under conservation, and a lot of conservation regulations are there, I already mentioned, and it continues into Bangladesh. So approximately 40% of this forest is with us, India, and 60% is with Bangladesh. This area is getting huge pressure. First of all, this is also very near to one of the most populated region of the planet. So this population pressure is something that have to be dealt with by the mangrove forest. Next is, with the climate change vagaries, there is increased instances of natural disasters that are coming on in this area. And these natural disasters disrupt the land, change the ecological ecology of mangrove, because more saline tolerant mangrove comes in, and the mangroves which are not that much salinity tolerant is getting replaced. So we are losing biodiversity because of the climate change here. Yes. Now the blue carbon magic that I am talking about, the two weapons that we have in our arsenal against the fight against climate change. So just narrating a small instances from Mahabharata, when Lord Arjuna gone to and done a huge devotional tapasya in order to get access to a very important astra, because Kurukshetra and the war of Kurukshetra was just imminent during that time. It was Pashupat. Pashupat is one of the greatest power that Lord Shiva has given to Lord Arjuna. So this is the Pashupat that we have against the war against climate change. Why? This particular citation is published in Nature, where it is proved that the mangroves can sequester more carbon than any other terrestrial ecosystem, and this fact is locked in this soil, this muddy hypersaline soil. This soil is so saline, anything that get into it, it do not get decomposed very easily, because there is very little microbial growth there, so it get trapped inside it. So it can trap huge amount of carbon. It do not release it back to the environment, and release is very less because of the saline condition. So along with the plant and the soil, this can be a very good tool to sequester carbon and a fight against climate change. That brought us to the next part, next astra. So I'll call it a Brahmashir, which is a very interesting power that has been used by Ashwatthama during, again, I'll narrate the case of Mahabharata, when the war was going on, and Dronacharya has given this lesson of another very powerful weapon, which is called Brahmashir. So this is the Brahmashir in our hands. That is the mangroves which can act as a barrier against natural disasters. We cannot stop the natural disaster, but yes, we can substantially reduce the impact of those disasters. And how disastrous these natural disasters are, cyclones are, it is evident. This is a whole village which is flooded after Amphan. This is a whole village that is underwater after Yash. This is supposed to be a dam, a earthen dam that separates the tidal creeks from the agricultural land, all flooded. This is a water rushing in to the earthen land, and we can say 4.6 million people resides in this area, just in the Indian part. I'm not counting the population that is residing in the Bangladesh part. It will even increase. So all are in problem, and these cyclones are increasing in frequency. Now in a year, even 2 cyclones hit, which is in the level of either a severe cyclonic storm or a super cyclone. So this is the kind of problem we are facing about, and the solution comes through community managed mangrove plantation system. Mangrove can be planted in the land because it can grow very well in hypersaline conditions. Some tending is required, but generally it grow very well. But we need to take in consideration of the local population, mobilizing them. This is the last habitable island of Indian Sundarban, Sajelia, where we have worked with 2,100 families and tried to implement a mangrove conservation model alongside livelihood generation schemes. And it was a success. So what we have done, we have involved the local communities to plant the mangroves through some methods that we generally use. This earthworks need to be done because sometimes it releases methane up, which can kill the plants. So this artwork done, and later after 3 or 4 years, we see this beautiful area of mangrove growing in these areas. And who helped in doing that? The local population. So local population, taking the help of the local population, mangrove can be used as an effective tool using both the 2 tools I mentioned in order to fight against the climate change. And how it helped during the Amphan cyclone. Whatever places that are protected by the mangrove plantation, they received, and these mangrove plantation are mostly 5 to 10 years old. So they protected that embankment. Those embankments are not breached. They are not flooded. The wind speed was reduced to substantial aspects, and we see no flooding in those areas. So yes, the Brahmashi does work. If you plant mangrove, it's definitely going to protect the land from natural disaster, which is proved by scientific investigation. And about the blue carbon, the first astra that we are having, that is also proven by scientific fact. We have worked in Sundarban for a long period of time, since 2012 to 2018, and we find out that if we plant mangrove, there's an exponential rise in the organic carbon density, which is calculated in ton per hectare, with a very minimal cost. So you have to invest very little, but you can sequester a huge amount of carbon and lock it in this mangrove soil. The conclusion, mangrove can be used as ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction. It can be a reservoir of fish. It can definitely work in carbon sequestration. Yeah, community mobilization is very much important, where I think all the environmentalists and environmental graduates comes in, and there is a flood of funding in these areas, because this is a fact known by almost all world now, that mangroves have this power and it can be a tool against the fight against the climate change. Thank you. With this, I will be stopping the sharing and inviting the question in. I think I have taken 4 minutes more time, so I apologize for that.
Which is perfectly fine. It's a wonderful explanation, and I'm sure our viewers would have got a lot of understanding on how important mangroves are. But there comes one question, which is like, you have explained Sundarban, okay? And for a person like me who is from North India, knows Sundarban for one common thing, that is tigers, right? So more for tigers and not for mangroves, right? So now that we know that tigers, that is their natural habitat, with this mangrove planting drive, is it going to impact the stay or the tigers population there?
Yeah, definitely it will. So what is happening in Sundarban, we see a very unique type of conservation model. So in this conservation model, there are total of 102 islands, out of which some of the islands are totally forested and protected by forest authorities. Human cannot go in without a permit. So this is how Sundarban conservation works. Now, recently we are seeing a lot of straying happening because those are the lands of tigers. Now there is a lot of myths revolving in. There's a very interesting story that in the myth of Bone Bibi, it is said that those forested land is the domain of Dokhin Rai. So Dokhin Rai is a kind of demonic creature according to the local mythology, which is nothing but tigers. So these are tiger lands. And on the other side of the Matla River, we find many islands, about 24 islands, which are habitated by humans. So those islands are almost devoid of mangroves because the settlement of humans in Sundarban dates back to 1903 during the British colonial period, where all the mangroves were slashed up in order to reclaim this land. Now what happens? Sometimes tigers stray away because for the tiger, these are all islands. They stray into the human habitated area, and it creates a lot of human wildlife conflict scenarios.
Right.
But the good news is, it is a study that we are currently conducting in Sundarbans, that in the areas that has mangrove plantation, tigers strays in those mangrove plantations. They understand very easily that it's not their land. They go back to their original habitat. They do not stray into the villages.
Okay.
The areas which do not have a mangrove plantation is just an embankment.
Right.
Tigers don't understand that. They transgress into the villages, and whenever you enter into village, now there's a very easy source of prey: cows, buffaloes, goats everywhere. So tigers cannot constrain itself from hunting there, and that can create the human tiger wildlife conflict that I was talking about. So mangrove helps actually to stop the straying insect.
Right. Great. So now next thing comes is like students are getting aware on career in environment, and I always give this message that activism is one thing, professional career is another, right? And a ground impact with professional career is a long-term thing, like you. Okay, you being a professional in this have been working for 13-14 years, and now you know everything about mangroves and can help our future generations learn and do this, which will help us fight the climate change. Right. So similarly, how this mangrove conservation, what is your view for young graduates who will be graduating and how they can help in this drive or they can make a career in this?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Now, Ashish, I will take your permission and narrate a story from my own life, because I think the best lesson we learn is from our own life. Right. So so when I completed my post-graduation, my master's degree in environmental system management, after that, I was looking for a job. I am very much interested in mangroves. I'm working from mangroves even during my master's time, MSc time. So I started working in ecology with Institute of Science, Bangalore. I gone into different mangrove patch across India because of my work. I have to go there.
Right.
And then I started thinking that now everybody knows it is scientifically proved that mangrove is one of the greatest carbon sinks, then why nobody does anything about it? Then we started to build up a project, and you will not believe it, Ashish. It was got funded by BMZ. BMZ is the Federal Ministry of Economic Corporation, Germany. The same work that I presented, the plantation work that started in 2012. And I, almost a fresher during that time, I just put my passion into writing. I written a project proposal, and immediately it was picked up by the EU funders, because they understand very effectively that what is the importance of this mangrove. And we tried to pull in a lot of livelihood in support system, so that the local community can also get benefited by the method, and we can also achieve our target of mangrove plantation and mangrove conservation. I became the program coordinator of that particular project. It is a employment for me, and within me, some 30 to 35 people used to work, and they are people from the local community, and I feel so good that I can give some kind of livelihood support to these communities and say actively taken part in the conservation, and it is a success. It is published in numerous journal, in peer review journal. If you search it, you will find it. It is a successful project. It has been implemented. So my message to the graduates: if you have a passion and if you have an interest in a very unique system that you think that only you are capable of, have the knowledge of understanding, and nobody else is actually looking into it, that is the same condition for climate change. If you look back 10 years back,
Right.
there are few people who are talking about climate change. Rest of the people just avoided them. Now climate change is a fact. Everybody know that. COP26 was there. We know the importance of managing climate change vagaries, how to manage the emissions, and everything is now coming into the policy levels. So if you have interest in the mangrove system, try to connect with the communities, write a project. It will be funded. Yeah, it is not a rocket science, very easy to do. Graduates can work with the community, and that is something we should all be looking forward to, because as an environmentalist, one of our main role is to bring environment to the communities. And who is in this juncture? These are the young graduates. I, being an academic, cannot go to the field every now and then, but as a young graduate, I have been there, and the young graduates can be there. It is not only an employment opportunity, and people have an idea that that the one who works in an NGO do not get fed. That's a very wrong idea. The kind of salary I used to get, I will not quote it, but when I used to run this project, I was very happy with it. So it is a very good paying opportunity, and the most important thing here is I have all the rights to implement this project as I see fit.
Right.
So I have done some experiments. I have planted different kind of mangroves. Sometimes it is successful, sometimes it was not successful, but most of the time the science has proven it to be true, and it has worked well. There's nobody to say no to you. So graduates can come in, write projects, bring the funding in, and definitely can take it as a career.
Right. So similarly, you have mentioned about the blue carbon thing. So what are the avenues of research in that?
Yes. So blue carbon is the carbon that is sequestered by the mangrove soil, mangrove and seagrasses soils. These are saline soil, so it can sequester huge amount of carbon. So nowadays, carbon crediting is going on in a very good way. Everybody knows about it, carbon credit. So say some EU countries are building in factories, and when you ask them that how you are sequestering this emission back, they are saying we have plantations in Bhutan, because they are funding in Bhutan in order to sequester that carbon. It is a compensatory plantation program. So in case of mangroves, a particular acre of land can sequester several times more carbon than any other plantation, even if it is a rainforest. So this gives us an edge that blue carbon research can be integrated into career prospects. Like people can work on blue carbon. They can let the people know how blue carbon is effective in this fight against climate change. And definitely this research will be published in a very good journal. The journal publications are coming up. And also this can go to the common people, where common people can also be motivated to take part in the plantation drive.
Okay. All right. So this is quite good. So I'm sure, and this is one area wherein a lot of students would not be aware, at least the prospective students would not be aware of, because your students, as you're teaching them, they know, but this is very important for the upcoming prospective students. Now, apart from this, so we have covered a lot about mangrove conservation, but apart from this, as a layman or as a student who want to make a career in environment, what do you think is the future of such course, and what are the different career options which a student can look for?
Definitely. So environment is one of the most what should I say, very interesting career opportunity that is now coming up. So there was a myth a long time back that environment do not have that much job opportunity. I never found that to be true, because I have graduated in 2007. From 2008 till 2022, there not been even a 1 month period when I was not employed. Okay, and I have done my PhD in 2013. There is a gap between 2007 and 2013 when I was working in different projects, different works, and the career prospects of environmentalists are always there. Now it has increased. How it is increased? Many of you may be aware of a very interesting news that has come surfaced lately in the newspaper, that India may be going for an Indian environmental services, because now India is a signatory to many of the global treaties. One of them is COP26, where India has given very strong commitments that it will have to implement certain kind of environmental regulations, and see this regulation is going to get implemented everywhere. So all these avenues have career prospects. I'll start from I will take some time in this and going to narrate all the career prospects that a prospective student may be having. First, in industries, we have environmental laws. I believe, with my very limited knowledge, though I am an ecologist, mangrove ecologist, I should not be commenting on environmental law, but still I'm commenting with my experience that we have very beautiful laws in India. All the environmental laws, if we go for Wildlife Protection Act or Environmental Protection Act, all the acts we see, these are very beautiful laws. Where we actually lag, it is that implementation of these laws. Meaning, you say somebody don't cut trees, but you cannot be like sitting on the head of that person to see that he or she is not cutting the trees.
Right.
So that's simple this place where environmental compliances come up. Every industry need to have an environmental compliance team, where we need experts who has ideas about the environmental compliances and what are the different regulations and how a company or a industry or a factory can implement those regulations. So one job opportunity. Second job opportunity, any factory that needs to be set up, it needs to go through certain kind of environmental clearances, which is generally done through a process called environmental impact assessment. All the environmental impact assessment needs some expert as per NABED guidelines. And these experts can be environmental graduates who come up and work in some area, gain some knowledge and expertise, and later work in these EIA constituencies and help the industries how to make the environmental management system better. Second, third point, third career option that comes up, always our most lucrative one, international arena. For an environmentalist, the international arena is always open. I am in academics as a faculty for last, say, some 5-6 years. So over this period of time, I have given recommendation to many students who have applied in postgraduate or doctoral program in foreign universities. And my outlook is most of the SOPs, this statement of purpose, that has an environmental angle to it, always get cleared. That means that environment, why there's a reason behind that. Nothing happened just because of luck. I believe that. The reason behind that is whole Western world is now very much aware of the environmental compliances. They need experts in the field of environment, but they are not getting that much expertise. So that avenue is always there.
Right.
Fourth point that I will be touching up, that is the NPOs and NGO sector. There is a very negative idea, because I once used to work in NGOs before I started my PhD as a full-time research scholar at IIT Dhanbad. So before that, I used to work in NGOs, and NGOs, in case of environmental projects, it's quite easy to get funds. Because I have got funds being a fresher who don't even have much experience. That was my first experience of working in a non-profit organization sector. I have written a project, I've written a log frame, it got passed. We have gone through several revision processes, but ultimately that was funded. I will not quote the kind of total budget of that particular project, but 4 years, it is about more than about 4 to 5 crores. So where we have involved the local communities, helped them to develop green livelihood ventures, and conserve mangrove. So environmental project linked with social applications has
Right.
more chances of getting funding, and we are talking about funding in crores, not a very limited funding where people will get constrained in working, or you are not going to paid well. You will be paid well, and the interesting part will be you will be spending your labor not only in the pursuit of the money, but also in the pursuit of something you like to do better. And the
Right.
kind of acclaim, kind of respect you will get from the community where you are working with the particular community, it's something that cannot be mentioned in terms or
Compensated with
evaluated
anything.
in terms of money,
Yeah.
if you ask me, my own experience.
True, true, true. Absolutely.
These are some of the avenues. There are many others.
Right.
Environment, governmental sector, there are avenues. There are avenues of starting startups and think tanks. We have seen startup and think tanks which are getting really popular nowadays. So everybody need a solution to this very obscure problem of climate change. Whoever can deliver that, you get a career out of it.
Correct. Perfect. Perfect. So this was a wonderful session. We have learned so much, especially a new topic called mangrove conservation. And I'm sure that we'll be doing many more sessions also to make the community aware and to make our students aware on such career options. How about your closing remarks on Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability? What exactly as a school we are offering and why a student should look forward to it?
So I am teaching in this school since 2 years now. The uniqueness, what we have, I am been there since the school has started. So the uniqueness that I find in this school is we don't treat environment as a discrete subject domain, meaning that the subject is not compartmentalized into science and social science. That is the
Right.
main problem. That along with me, other faculties who are here under the leadership of eminent environmental sociologist and a lawyer, Professor Armin Rosenkrantz, that that subject cannot be compartmentalized. We have to look into a subject in a holistic way, and that is where the problem and the expertise problem comes up. A person who is learning environment from a scientific angle, they only know the science part. They don't have any clue about what is the law and what is the different debate in the political science or social arena. So when you go to field and work, you will see that science do not work like that. It have to work hand in hand with the social sciences. So here in this school, both this aspect is covered.
Correct.
So you are going to get, and you will get the freedom to choose your own topics.
True.
We offer electives where some of the electives are cross-registered with other schools of JGU. So you have the choice to cater your career in the direction where you are passionate about. Because now success is not limited to degrees. It is limited to the passion. A passionate graduate can never be unsuccessful because they have passion in it. So
true. Absolutely.
give you this total platform. You have the opportunity to select the electives. You have the opportunity to research individually with faculties. Each of us, one of the graduate students have published papers in peer-reviewed journal who are a first semester, second semester student working with faculties. So research, and there are students who are working in the field level implementation. There are a lot of internship opportunities and international exposure. Some of your degree can also be there from, or a credit transfer process from a foreign university that we have MOU with.
True.
These are all the avenues that JCS offers.
Correct. So with this, I'll just put a closing remark that the world is full of opportunities for a seeker. The one who seeks gets. So irrespective of what field you choose, it has a lot of opportunity, especially in terms of environment. Professor Abhirup has given a clear indication that there are a lot of opportunities. So if you have any query, please feel free to reach out to us on our website. You have got all the contact details, numbers. We are available on WhatsApp, calls, and mails. Thank you so much for attending this session. We look forward to see you next week for another session on environment and the current issues. Thank you so much. Thank you, Professor.